Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. No admin issues to round up today, so we'll just dive straight in, starting of course with our invitation to those of you who haven't yet done so, to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the notification icon, to be notified when the next one is uploaded. We'd like to urge those of you who haven't yet done so, to sign our online petition for an inquiry into the BBC and Channel 4's coverage of Lewis Hamilton and Abu Dhabi. A link has been provided in the description. If you are on X, then please repost our tweet. Thank you. The F1 media have been laying into Sir Lewis for so long that it should come as no surprise that he has been attacked ahead of the Australian GP. We are not aware of any other sports personality inside or outside of Formula One that is routinely attacked like he is. For example, at the start of the week he came under coordinated attack, as scurrilous pieces about him having been disqualified for lying to the stewards some 16 years ago at the Australian GP resurfaced. Of course, the lead article, which was by our one and only Planet F1, was subsequently reproduced on MSN and transmitted globally. Now, we have shown in numerous videos how many of the attacks on Sir Lewis are coordinated and include multiple conspirators. We have also shown how the BBC is in the front line of attacking him, so it is no surprise that they also launched an attack on the same day as Planet F1. But in typically insidious BBC style, theirs was deadlier. In a treacherous article with a clickbait title, "What would success look like? Key questions for Hamilton at Ferrari." BBC's resident assassin Andrew Benson sought to assassinate his target while pretending to be complimentary. We have already shown in several videos, including one published last October titled, "Shocker as Lewis Hamilton digitally erased from BBC Sport F1 coverage of the Austin GP, how the BBC have been working to diminish his digital footprints by minimizing references to him, while being the leading source for information gaslighting Abu Dhabi." And in another video published just last week titled, "Lewis Hamilton and the Top 5 Skeptics Who Were Converted by His Move to Ferrari," we showed how they had valiantly resisted being swept along with their commercial counterparts by Hamilton mania. It is therefore ironic that this the 10th of March article by Benson, which is an exercise in self-incrimination, was the first substantive effort to tap into Hamilton mania. It is also instructive that while the headline gives the appearance of being complimentary, the content was laced with deadly assassination attempts. To start with, in his intro, Benson acknowledges that Hamilton's move to Ferrari was the single biggest storyline of the 2025 Formula One season. Furthermore, he noted that Sir Lewis was the sport's biggest star, the only driver who truly transcends the sport, who has joined its most iconic team, and interest in how their partnership develops was stratospheric. That being said, why did the BBC's coverage before now not reflect this development like every other media? Just like we pointed out in our previous video, it will be near impossible for the media to talk about Sir Lewis winning an 8th at Ferrari without referencing Abu Dhabi 2021. True to form, Benson tried to sidestep the problem by saying that Hamilton was motivated because he felt he had been robbed. Well, one would think that Benson did not have an opinion on the matter. Surely, as an expert analyst paid to tell the public what's what, he should have been able to say whether Hamilton was robbed or not. Is that not what is being paid for? The fact that he chose to keep his expert opinion to himself speaks volumes, and in so doing, he unwittingly set a trap for himself for later. In the very next paragraph, he trips himself up by acknowledging that Mercedes had not given Sir Lewis a championship-winning car. Yet, the BBC have been in the forefront of spreading the false narrative that his so-called loss of form was down to him struggling to adapt to the new ground effect cars, rather than the poor Mercedes car that was incapable of winning a championship. According to the BBC's own data, the two Mercedes drivers had shared the first two ground effect seasons, with Hamilton having outperformed George by a significant margin in the latter. So, it couldn't possibly be argued that he was struggling more with the ground effect cars than George. This suggestion, which only appeared after he announced his departure, could therefore have been attributed to other factors such as internal sabotage, if one was not afflicted by LHDS. Critically, in their table, the BBC chose not to list the finishing positions for the drivers, which would have further undermined the ground effect hoodoo. However, Benson's deepest cut came with his false claim that it was Hamilton who approached Ferrari. Firstly, Sir Lewis was perfectly entitled to approach Ferrari if he wished, so that should not be an issue. The issue is that Benson chose to make this wholly false representation, when it had been widely reported that Ferrari had been routinely approaching him for years and he kept turning them down, until December 2023, when Fred Vasseur called him at his home in Colorado. So, why did Benson feel the need to lie about it? Well, the answer is quite simple: this nasty person is attempting to use the cover of shoddy journalism to smear the GOAT. This is the beginning of something akin to the tax-dodging smear, where practically all F1 drivers live in the legitimate tax haven of Monaco, but only Sir Lewis has been singled out to be falsely smeared as a tax dodger by media houses whose ownership is vested in tax havens. For some malevolent reason that will eventually surface, Benson is seeking to lay the foundation for portraying Hamilton's perfectly legitimate exercise of free will as something unsavory. All that now remains is for others who have been lined up to start spinning the transfer as a betrayal of Mercedes, to cite the Benson article as their source. Yes, folks, that is the primary purpose of Benson's article that purports to be addressing the issue of what success would look like for Sir Lewis. Everything else on that page is designed to mask this wicked and obvious lie. Of course, after planting the poison as planned, Benson doubled down in the next section, by ventilating the well-circulated notion that in his third and final season with the poor ground effect Mercedes car, that he had ended the previous year within third while George finished eighth, Sir Lewis suddenly started to struggle more than his teammate, even though they ended up sixth and seventh. Unsurprisingly, in the first year of the ground effect cars that had been designed specifically to counter Hamilton's driving style, after he had been outrageously robbed of his record-breaking eighth, he ended up sixth with Russell fourth. So, you can understand why BBC excluded the finishing positions from their chart. Predictably, in this segment, Benson, who had no expert opinion to offer on 2021, had plenty to say on why the GOAT had struggled so badly. Now, I am not aware that he ever stepped inside a racing car, not to talk of a Formula One car, but he seemed to have extensive knowledge of what the GOAT was doing wrong. The irony is just too much to bear, but it is what it is. Now, if the untrained Benson can work out what the GOAT was doing wrong, why couldn't the GOAT himself? Or better still, why hadn't the career journalist taken up the more lucrative career of racing F1 cars? Benson thinks that he can just put pen to paper and write what he likes, or attempt to pass of briefing material provided to him by Mercedes engineers as his, but what he has inadvertently done is expose his malicious intent. Last but not least, Benson waited until the last segment to use 6 out of his 43 paragraphs to make a token attempt to answer the question posed in the headline. But what was particularly significant was that at the end of the page, the more on this story segment that purportedly provides links to more of this story, did not offer one link to more of any story on Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari. Guess the BBC did not have enough material to link to, or Hamilton at Ferrari was just a cover. Forza Ferrari.